Wiser men than you have tried and failed to find an answer. And you will fail too, Siddhartha. And so the wheel turns. And yet it all looked so promising at the start. Born on the full moon of May, Prince Siddhartha Gautama. Asita the seer prophesied that you would grow up to be a great leader, either a king or a man. Of course, your father wanted you to be a king and reign after his death, not become some wandering fortune teller. So he decreed that you should live in luxury and never see the world of pain outside the palace, and so never see the need for religion. And so the wheel turns. Silk and suckle, sarangis and spice. Sense was sated, but you still weren't satisfied. All you could do was questions. What is life? Why are we here? Is this all there is? And then one day, you are lies beyond the palace wall. For the first time you went out into the city, riding in a gilded carriage. But you wanted to see the city by yourself, so you escaped into maze of alleyways, and you were horrified by what you saw. An old woman, wrinkled, toothless and crooked. A man eaten by disease, coughing, sweating and covered in boils. Then, by the banks of the river, a funeral procession. The dead body was carried to the water's edge and laid gently on a pile of wood. The family trailed behind, crying and wailing in their grief. You stayed until the pile lit and watched as oily black smoke billowed the sky. It was the end of your innocence. There is no to life. All that happens is that you get old, get ill, and die. But on the way back to the palace, a holy man was sitting serenely at the side of the road, begging for alms. He had nothing, but he seemed at peace. Here, you thought, must be the answer. And so the wheel turns. You left the palace in the dead of night and rode to the far reaches of the kingdom. You exchanged your robes for rags, and in a forest you found a group of 5 holy men. They were naked and dirty, unkempt and scrawny. They said that by making their bodies suffer, their spirits could be free. So you joined them and starved yourself until you were nothing but skull and sinew, yet still there were no answers. And so the wheel turns. A young woman came to give an offering to the forest gods and thought she'd found a tree spirit. You took her food and ate your fill. You gave up a life of comfort and you gave up a life of suffering. But neither pleasure nor pain will give you the answer. And so it will turn through birth, youth, to this moment. It will turn on through old age, illness and death. It will turn on through all your lives beyond, over and over again, in a never-ending and meaningless cycle. And you will learn nothing. Experience will not give you the answer. So how long are you going to sit here? It's been 49 days. It's full moon again and the morning star is rising once more. What's this? A new idea forming? What's this fleeting I cannot grasp? It's there on the edge of your consciousness, but getting closer. Show me. A middle way? That. You say life can never satisfy us because we always want more. You say the only way to achieve peace is to stop wanting. You say the answer is to sit at the centre of a wheel, detached from the world that revolves around you. Only then can achieve peace. Brave words, Siddhartha, but they are wasted. There is no one here to behold your enlightenment. No, the earth itself is his wit. She conspires with Siddhartha to reject me. He has. He is enlightened. He is the Buddha.
Where's Ananda?
He's in the shed, crying. He thinks you're going to die.
Go and get him. Oh, I'm tired, Kisabutami. My body feels like an old cart held together with straps. Ananda, all of us sooner or later have to leave what we love. But, Master, I am not ready for you to die. You don't need me. I've told you all I can. And what I've told you is like the ocean. The further you go in, the deeper it gets. But I can hardly swim yet. Then let's start together at the shore. When we die, we are reborn. Our good actions in one life are rewarded in the next. When I was reborn into this life, my father, King Suddhodana, had the highest hopes for me.
Wise Asita, is Prince Gautama destined for greatness?
This child has all the signs of a great being. He has lived many lives, each more noble and truthful than the last. He will become either a great ruler or a teacher of great truths.
What will decide it?
He will decide.
I want him to be a great king like me. And I think he will have no need to leave this palace.
My father created a perfect world for me for over 20 years.
The prince will take his walk along this path today. Make sure there are no dead flowers.
Your Highness.
The prince's horse is lame.
Then stable him elsewhere until he recovers. This is something the prince need not know about.
Gave me everything I could possibly desire. I had no need to ask for anything, but there were some things that even my father couldn't control.
Prepare the horses. I'd like to take a ride. In all these years, Channa, I've never gone beyond that wall. Who has painted his hair white? Why does he move so slowly? Is it a dance?
He is old.
What is old?
It happens to all of us in time. The skin dries, the hair loses its color, and the body becomes weak. That is old.
It happens to all of us? I don't like his singing.
He's not singing. He is sick and in pain.
What is sick?
His body is complaining. All bodies, rich or poor, ignorant or wise, can feel this way.
All bodies can feel this way? How can he sleep with all that noise around him?
This is a dead man. He is not asleep. His life has gone.
Is this the only dead man in the world?
I'm afraid not, my prince. Death comes to every living thing.
Take me back, Channa.
My son, I've got wonderful news for you.
Why didn't you tell me about life outside?
I wanted the palace to be your life always. I wanted you to be happy.
And I was. But now I can't ever be happy again.
Of course you can.
Knowing that you, my dear father, will die. That my wife may get sick. That Channa and I will grow old and weak.
This is not the time to think about death. I have wonderful news. You have a son.
I have a son.
He was beautiful. And of course I wanted to be glad, but now I knew that he too would have to suffer sickness, old age, and finally death.
What are you?
A seeker.
Of what?
Of the only thing in life that doesn't wither and die.
And what is that?
Truth.
And have you found it?
Not yet. But since leaving home and giving everything away, I felt more at peace.
I'm not free to leave the palace. I have a duty to my father's kingdom.
But if you seek and find the truth, your kingdom will be infinitely greater.
I decided to leave that night. And like you, Ananda, I cried. It is painful to be separated from those you love. But I knew that when I had found what I was looking for, I would return to share it with them. Channa took me to the forest, and I exchanged my palace clothes for simple ones. I cut my hair, and then told Channa to tell my father that from now on, I would live without a home, in search of perfect peace of mind. I spent a year with 2 elderly masters of meditation. They helped me to calm and train my mind. But I knew I hadn't found what I was looking for. I moved on. I met 5 other men, all about my age. They too were searching.
I have studied meditation with 2 masters, but we sat in the shade.
Pushing our bodies to the limits gives us spiritual energy.
When you deny your body what it most wants, you set your mind free for higher things. I desire comfort and warmth, and he loves to talk.
I desire sleep.
What do you desire most?
I always seem to be hungry.
Well then, you know what you must do without.
I starved myself for 6 years. By the end, I was eating 3 sesame seeds a day. And yet, the only thing that I could be certain about was that I was close to death. As I prepared to die, I thought of my son, and remembered a moment when I was about his age, the meaning of which I suddenly understood. It was the palace ploughing match. Everyone else was watching a festival, but I was seeing something different. Sweating men and animals, blind milk-white grubs being exposed to the sun, cutworms and insects. Everyone else was enjoying themselves, but I saw just suffering and death. I sat there for a long time, feeling very still. Only in that stillness could I see how things really were. This memory filled me with energy. If I had already felt something of the peace I was seeking when just a child, well-fed and clothed, then I certainly did not need to starve myself to find it again. I decided to eat properly once more. Much to the disgust of my companions.
I shall not get up from here until I found the truth I'm seeking. That special awareness, enlightenment.
But the mind has a terrible enemy. His name is Mara, and he seeks to tempt and destroy. First, he sent his beautiful daughters.
Tempt him. Distract him. Make him desire you.
Mara knew that if I found enlightenment, I would go on to tell others how to escape his evil power. I had to find that moment of stillness again.
So, you ignore my daughters. Well, you shall feel the fury of my army. Be plagued by your worst nightmare, Gautama! Do you think you are ready for supreme enlightenment? Gautama, are you so sure you have it in you? Supreme enlightenment. Gautama, are you worthy enough?
But as I touched the earth spoke.
He is worthy.
And I saw my hundreds of past lives. And I saw how what I had done in one life influenced the next. I saw life as a wheel. For some, always moving upwards. For others, always falling downwards. There was no escape from the wheel of birth, death, and rebirth. No escape from the three poisons, hate, greed, and stupidity that kept the wheel turning. I realized that whether your life is easy or hard, you can't escape death. But suddenly, what I'd been searching for was revealed to me. If I did not fear death, death had no power. Watching the moon that long night, I slowly understood that the way to avoid suffering was to free yourself from wanting anyone or anything, and to be ready always to give and receive. Found enlightenment. I had become a Buddha, an awoken one.
Guys, we have a few questions we would like to ask you.
Okay, so how this is going to work is I have a few questions, and whoever knows the answer can raise your hand, and Victor will pass out lollipops if you get the answer right. So, for the first video, we have 3 questions. And the first one is, where did he find the 5 men?
He found the 5 holy men in the forest. Thank you.
Oh, yes. And the other question is, what was the name of the prince?
Siddha or something. Yes. Sid. Oh my god, I don't know how to spell it. Oh, Siddhara. No.
No.
Siddhartha.
Yes. The last question for the first video is, after how many days did the prince get a new idea? Yes. Moving on to the second video, I have 14 questions. The first one is, what happens when we die and we are reborn?
We are reborn into another life.
Is that right?
Well, we're looking for a different answer. Does anyone else have a different answer?
The actions of our past lives influence our next life.
Correct. Second question. For over how many years did the prince's father keep the prince protected inside the palace?
20.
Correct. Third question. Why did the prince ask for the horses to be prepared?
He wanted to see the city.
Correct. Next question. The prince said, I don't like his singing. What was actually wrong with the man that the prince thought was singing?
The man was in pain.
Correct. Fifth question. What was the wonderful news that the father had for the prince?
The prince had a son.
Correct. What was the prince worried that his new son would have to suffer from?
From death.
True. Okay, we're halfway through the questions. What was the prince's mission when he decided to live without a home?
Seeking the truth.
It's not wrong, but we're looking for a different answer.
Searching for the perfect peace of mind.
How many masters of meditation did the prince spend 2 years with?
2.
Correct. What did the prince do for 6 years?
So he starves himself for 6 years.
Yes. Who or what did he think of when he was preparing to die?
His son?
Yes. We have 4 more questions. What did Mara do to stop the prince from reaching enlightenment?
He used his daughter and his army to distract.
Okay, yeah. Okay, last 3 questions. What are the 3 poisons?
Greed, stupidity, and hate.
Yeah. According to Gautama, how do you free yourself?
By ridding yourself of all desires.
Yeah. Okay, last question. Actually, this is kind of like 2 parts. How do you spell Gautama in English and in Burmese? Or in Burmese? You can answer whichever. No Google.
In English?
In English, it's Gautama.
Yes. Does anyone else know how to? Does anyone else want to answer?
Do I
for
also
Burmese?
do in Burmese?
Sure.
對土家鬼野茶，講嘅野茶。
Wait, we're gonna let someone else spell it.
Can I get the candy or no?
Oh yeah. Give him candy.
對土講嘅野茶個。
Good job, guys.
Wait, raise your hand if you didn't get candy, because Grace is gonna come around and give it to you.
Guys, so right now we will be moving on to the next part of this session, which would be Pong Pong's speech on compassion.
Oh, Grace, hold on, Mommy.
Okay, first we are going to look at this clip.
I guess this is a result of globalization that you can find Coca-Cola tins on top of the Everest and Buddhist monk in Monterey. And so I just came 2 days ago from the Himalayas to your kind invitation, so I would like to invite you also for a while to the Himalayas themselves. And to show the place where meditators like me, who began with being a molecular biologist in Pasteur Institute and found their way to the mountains. So these are a few images I was lucky to take and be there. This is the Mount Kailash in eastern Tibet. Wonderful setting. This is from Marlborough country. This is a turquoise lake, a meditator. This is the hottest day of the year, somewhere in eastern Tibet, on August 1st. And the night before, we camped, and my Tibetan friends said, we're going to sleep outside. And I said, why? We have enough space in the tent. They say, yes, but it's summertime. So now we are going to speak of happiness. As a Frenchman, I must say that there are a lot of French intellectuals that think that happiness is not at all interesting. I just wrote an essay on happiness, and there was a controversy, and someone wrote an article saying, don't impose on us the dirty work of happiness. We don't care about being happy. We need to live with passion. We like the ups and downs of life. We like our suffering because it's so good when it ceases for a while. This is what I see from the balcony of my hermitage in the Himalayas. It's about 2 meters by 3, and you are all welcome anytime. Now let's come to happiness or well-being. And first of all, despite what the French intellectuals say, it seems that no one wakes up in the morning thinking, may I suffer the whole day. Which means that somehow, consciously or not, directly or indirectly, in the short and the long term, whatever we do, whatever we hope, whatever we dream, somehow is related to a deep, profound desire for well-being or happiness. As Pascal said, even the one who hangs himself somehow is looking for a cessation for suffering. He finds no other way. But then if you look in the literature, East and West, you can find incredible diversity of definition of happiness. Some people say can only be lived in remembering the past, imagining the future, never in the present. Some people say happiness is right now, is the quality of the freshness of the present moment. And that led to Henri Bergson, the French philosopher, to say all the great thinkers of humanity have left happiness in the vague so that they could define, each of them could define in their own terms. Well, that will be fine if it was just a secondary preoccupation in life. But now, if it is something that's going to determine the quality of every instant of our life, then we better know what it is. Have some clearer idea. And probably the fact that we don't know that is why so often, although we seek happiness, it seems we turn our back to it. Although we want to avoid suffering, it seems we are running someone towards it. And that also comes from some kind of confusions. One of the most common one is happiness and pleasure. But if we look at the characteristic of those two, pleasure is contingent upon time, upon its object, upon the place. It is something that changes of nature. Beautiful chocolate cake, first serving is delicious, second one, not so much, then we feel disgust. That's the nature of things. We get tired. I used to be a fan of Bach. I used to play it on the guitar, and I can hear it 2, 3, 5 times. If I had to hear it 24 hours non-stop, it might be very tiring. If you are feeling very cold, you come near a fire, it's so wonderful. Then after some moments, you just go a little back and then it starts burning. it sort of uses itself as you experience it. And also, again, it can also, it's something that it is not something that is radiating outside. Like, you can feel intense pleasure, and some others around you can be suffering a lot. Now, what then will be happiness? And happiness, of course, is such a vague word. So let's say well-being. And so I think the best definition, according to the Buddhist view, is that well-being is not just a mere pleasurable sensation. It is a deep sense of serenity and fulfillment. A state that actually pervades and underlies all emotional states and all the joys of sorrows that can come one's way. Well, that might be surprising. Can we have this kind of well-being while being sad? In a way, why not? Because we are speaking at a different level. Look at the waves coming near the shore. When you are at the bottom of the wave, you hit the bottom. You hit the solid rock. When you are surfing on the top, you are all elated. So you go from elation to depression. There's no depth. Now if you look at the high sea, there might be beautiful, calm ocean like a mirror. There might be storms. But the depth of the ocean is still there, unchanged. So now how is that? It can only be a state of being, not just a fleeting emotion, sensation, even joy that can be the spring of happiness. But there's also wicked joy. You can rejoice in someone's suffering. So now how do we proceed in our quest for happiness? Very often we look outside. We think that if we could gather this and that, all the conditions, something like we say, everything to be happy. To have everything to be happy, that very sentence already bears the doom of destruction of happiness. To have everything. If we miss something, it collapses. And also when things go wrong, we're trying to fix things outside so much. But our control on the outer world is limited, temporary, and often illusory. So now look at the inner conditions. Aren't it stronger? Isn't it the mind that translates the outer condition into happiness and suffering? And isn't that stronger? We know by experience that we can be in what we call a little paradise and yet be completely unhappy within. The Dalai Lama was once in Portugal and there was a lot of construction going on everywhere. So one evening he said, look, you are doing all these things, but isn't it nice also to build something within? And he said, unless that, even you get a high-tech flat on the 100th floor of a super modern and comfortable building, if you are deeply unhappy within, all you are going to look for is a window from which to jump. So now, at the opposite, we know a lot of people who in very difficult circumstances manage to keep serenity, inner strength, inner freedom, confidence. So now if the inner conditions are stronger, of course the outer conditions do influence. And it's wonderful to live longer, healthier, to have access to information, education, to be able to travel, to have freedom. It's highly desirable. However, this is not enough. Those are just auxiliary help, conditions. The experience that translates everything is within the mind. So then when we ask oneself how to nurture the conditions for happiness, the inner conditions, and which are those which will undermine happiness. So then this needs to have some experience. We have to know from ourselves there are certain states of mind that are conducing to this flourishing, to this well-being, what the Greek call eudaimonia, flourishing. And there are some which are adverse to this well-being. And so if we look from our own experience, anger, hatred, jealousy, arrogance, obsessive desire, strong grasping, they don't leave us in such a good state after we have experienced it. And also they are detrimental to others' happiness. So we may consider that the more those are invading our mind, and like a chain reaction, the more we'll feel miserable, we'll feel tormented. At the opposite, everyone knows deep within that an act of selfish generosity, if from the distance, without anyone knowing anything about it, we could save a child's life, make someone happy. We don't need a recognition. We don't need any gratitude. Just the mere fact of doing that feels such a sense of adequation with our deep nature. And we would like to be like that all the time. So is that possible? To change our way of being, to transform one's mind? Are those negative emotions or destructive emotions inherent to the nature of mind? Is a change possible in our emotions, in our traits, in our moods? So for that we have to ask, what is the nature of mind? And if we look from the experiential point of view, there is a primary quality of consciousness. That is the mere fact to be cognitive, to be aware. Consciousness is like a mirror that allows all images to rise on it. You can have ugly faces, beautiful faces in the mirror. The mirror allows that, but the mirror is not tainted, is not modified, is not altered by those images. Likewise, behind every single thought, there is the bare consciousness, pure awareness. This is the nature. It cannot be tainted intrinsically with hatred or jealousy, because then, if it was always there, like a dye that would permeate the whole cloth, then it would be found all the time somewhere. We know we're not always angry, always jealous, always generous. So because the basic fabric of consciousness is this pure cognitive quality that differentiates it from a stone, there is a possibility for change, because all emotions are fleeting. That is the ground for mind training. Mind training is based on the idea that two opposite mental factors cannot happen at the same time. You could go from love to hate, but you cannot at the same time, toward the same object, the same person, want to harm and want to do good. You cannot in the same gesture shake hand and give a blow. So there are natural antidotes to emotions that are destructive to our inner well-being. So that's a way to proceed. Rejoicing compared to jealousy. A kind of sense of inner freedom as opposite to intense grasping and obsession. Benevolence, loving kindness against hatred. But of course, each emotion then would need a particular antidote. Another way is to try to find a general antidote to all emotions. And that's by looking at their very nature. Usually, when we feel annoyed, hatred, or upset with someone, or obsessed with something, the mind goes again and again to that object. Each time it goes to the object, it reinforces that obsession or that annoyance. So then it's a self-perpetuating process. So what we need to look now is, instead of looking outward, we look inward. Look at anger itself. It looks very menacing, like a billowing monsoon cloud, thunderstorm. But we think we could sit on the cloud, but if we go there, it's just mist. Likewise, if you look at the thought of anger, it will vanish like frost under the morning sun. If you do this again and again, the propensity, the tendencies for anger to arise again will be less and less each time you dissolved it. And at the end, although it may rise, it will just cross the mind like a bird crossing the sky without leaving any track. So this is the principle of mind training. Now, it takes time, because it took time for all those faults in our mind, tendencies to build up. So it will take time to unfold them as well. But that's the only way to go. Mind transformation. That is the very meaning of meditation. It means familiarization with a new way of being, new way of perceiving things, which is more in adequation with reality, with interdependence, with the stream and continuous transformation which our being and our consciousness is. So the interface with cognitive science, since we need to come to that, and what was the subject of, we have to deal in such a short time, with brain plasticity. Brain was thought to be more or less fixed. All the neuronal connection in numbers and quantities were thought till the last 20 years, thought to be more or less fixed when we reach the adult age. Now recently it has been found that it can change a lot. A violinist, as we heard, we have done 10,000 hours of violin practice. Some area that controls the movements of fingers in the brain change a lot. Increase and reinforcement of the synaptic connections. So can we do that with human qualities, with loving kindness, with patience, with openness? So that's what those great meditators have been doing. Some of them who came to the labs, like in Madison, Wisconsin, or in Berkeley, did 20 to 40,000 hours of meditation. They do like 3 years retreat where they do meditate 12 hours a day, and then the rest of their life they would do that 3-4 hours a day. They are real Olympic champions of mind training. This is the place where they meditate. You can see it's kind of inspiring. Now, here with 256 electrodes. So what did they find? Of course, same thing, the scientific embargo. A paper has been submitted to Nature. Hopefully it will be accepted. It deals with the state of compassion, unconditional compassion. We ask meditators who have been doing that for years and years and years to put their mind in a state where there's nothing but loving kindness, total availability to sentient being. Of course, during the training, we do that with objects. We think of people suffering, we think of people we love. But at some point, it can be a state which is all-pervading. Here's the preliminary result, which I can show because it's already been shown. The bell curve shows 150 controls. And what is being looked at is the difference between the right and the left frontal lobe. In very short, people who have more activity on the right side of the prefrontal cortex are more depressed, withdrawn. They don't describe a lot of positive affect. It's the opposite on the left side. More tendency to altruism, to happiness, to express and curiosity and so forth. So there's a basic line for people, and also it can be changed. If you see a comic movie, you go more to the left side. If you are happy about something, you go more to the left side. If you have a bout of depression, you go to the right side. Here, the minus 0.5 is the 4 standard deviation of a meditator who meditates on compassion. It's something that is totally out of the bell curve. So I don't have to go into all the different scientific results. Hopefully they will come. But they found that this is after 3.5 hours in a fMRI. It's like coming out of a space ship. Also, it has been shown in other labs, for instance, Paul Ekman's labs in Berkeley, that some meditators are able also to control the emotional response more than it could be taught. Like the startle experiments, for instance. If you sit a guy on a chair with all this kind of apparatus measuring your physiology, and there's kind of a bomb that goes off. It's a so instinctive response that in 20 years, they never saw anyone who would not jump. Some meditators, without trying to stop it, but simply by being completely open, thinking that bang is just going to be just a small event, like a shooting stars, they're able not to move at all. So the whole point of that is not sort of to make like a circus thing of showing exceptional beings who can jump or whatever. It's more to say that mind training matters. That this is not just a luxury. This is not a supplementary vitamin for the soul. This is something that's going to determine the quality of every instant of our life. We are ready to spend 50 years achieving education. We love to do jogging, fitness. We do all kinds of things to remain beautiful. Yet, we spend surprisingly little time taking care of what matters most, the way our mind functions, which again is the ultimate thing that determines the quality of our experience. Now, compassion should also be put in action. That's what we try to do in different places. Just this one example is worth a lot of work. This lady with bone TB left alone in the tent was going to die with her only daughter. 1 year later, how she is. Different schools and clinics we've been doing in Tibet. And just I leave you with the beauty of those looks that tells more about happiness that I could ever say. And jumping monks of Tibet. Flying monks. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your attention. The monk, the French national, he is the author of these two books. The first, Happiness, okay, his name is Matthew Ricard. He has been a Buddhist monk for about 40 years. And he dedicates his time to about 140 humanitarian projects in Tibet, India, and Nepal. In the morning, we talk about mindfulness. Now, I'd like to talk about mindful compassion. Mindfulness is the foundation of many qualities. One of them is compassion. I'd like to talk about compassion as an essential quality, something that we can use to motivate ourselves. When you study, why you study. If you want to get good grade, that's very good. That motivates you. Okay. But because you focus on yourself, that will have some side effect. That's stress. Is there a better way of doing this? That's compassion. Compassion is necessarily about connecting with other people's pain and trying to reduce them. I'd like to read you one passage from this book. It's called The Oxford Handbook of Compassion Science. It's this book. Okay. From page 5, Compassion as a Motivation. Professor Gilbert and Mascaro, for example, define compassion as a sensitivity to suffering in self and others, with commitment to try to alleviate and prevent it. This is exactly from what we get from Buddhist texts. They actually have reference to that. So when you study, if you're trying to find a problem or maybe suffering because of lack of education, because of lack of awareness of something, awareness of environment, awareness of global warming, because of lack of scientific knowledge, engineering knowledge, medical knowledge, ethical awareness, anything. If you try to identify some problem and trying to see how that lack of knowledge is creating a lot of problem in our country, in Myanmar, and you want to help alleviate that problem, you want to help reduce that problem, this is to use problem and compassion as a motivation. You study hard because you want to help solve those problems. If you see many children suffering from a certain disease, preventable disease, and you look at how that disease has an impact on their family, first on the children themselves, and then on their family, and then on the whole country. If you feel that pain, you use that pain to motivate yourself. Usually, I must say that I have been talking about this in many different places. People use competition as motivation. Because someone in my class has a better grade, has a good grade, so I want to get in a better grade than that person. So we like to use that kind of competition as our motivation. We motivate ourselves by pitting ourselves against someone and someone's success. If you do that, basically, your focus is self-centered. You can do this. Many people actually do this. If you would do a bit of research, from last year, October, in Singapore, the Ministry of Education stopped encouraging competition. Instead, they like to find another way of motivating students. So today, I like to offer you, what we call compassion meditation. How to do meditation. We can do maybe slightly shorter than in the morning. We're going to do this meditation. We have to try to orientate our mind towards compassion. That's to find some pain and to feel that pain. To feel that pain. And generate compassion in our heart. You have just seen in the video clip, a compassionate mind. For someone who has compassionate mind, their brain is more active on the left side when it comes to the prefrontal cortex. I hope you got what the clip was offering you is in French accent. How many of you studied French? Merci beaucoup. Okay. You see, for people who are very stressed out, the right side of their prefrontal cortex is more active. And basically what he was trying to say, this is a Frenchman with a PhD in cellular biology and also many years of meditation. What he's saying is that the mind can be trained. The brain can be trained. It's up to us if we want to activate the right side of our brain or the left side of our brain. Until about 20 years ago, science believed after we have reached a certain age, our brain cannot be changed. But this is not the case anymore. After experiment between science and neurology and biology, people have come to believe a new theory called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity, our brain can be altered for the better or for the worse. For the worse, if we don't learn how to manage our stress, if we don't change our self-centered attitude. For the better, if we learn how to connect with the pain of other people. I'd like to give you another example just before we start meditation. A very big company from Germany, based in Thailand, is called B-Trim Company. It's a multi-billion corporate from Germany. One day, I was sharing a platform, a panel at a business school in Bangkok with the CEO. He said he was using Buddhist compassionate attitude in his business management. That is compassion. And the way he explained it is he is going to produce a chair. And he would be thinking how people suffer when they need a chair and they don't have one. And what kind of chair they need. Is it a tall one? And what about the back? The design? How the chair, could be designed to support someone who actually needs it. So, compassion means you feel the pain of that customer and you do your research. Once you do that, once you walk that, you go that way, you're going to come up with the best chair for that person. This is compassion-based business. Your chair is going to be selling like a hot cake because it solves the problem of those who need it. So this is how we can use compassion as the motivation, as work ethics. Okay. So for you, when you study, when you have to study hard, if you a little bit, day by day, a few minutes a day, maybe 2-3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes on the way to school, if you motivate yourself, why I study? Why I study? Because there are many people out there who don't know this, who may not know this, and as a result, they make inappropriate and perhaps wrong decision that affects many people. I want to right those wrongs so that everybody in this country can prosper again. So if you have that notion, we call this compassion. We call this compassion as motivation. This book, this happiness, I'd like to read you from page 170. How we can use compassion to make ourselves happy. I'm just reading this. Over the past 30 years, all these questions, that is, how we can make ourselves happy, have been the subject of ample research. Hundreds of thousands of subjects have been studied in some 70 countries, and a vast number of results published. 3 main conclusions emerge from such work. First, outward condition and other general factors such as wealth, education, social status, hobby, age, ethnicity, and so on have circumstantial influence, but account altogether for no more than 10 to 15% of the variable satisfaction quotient. Outside condition counts only for 10 to 15%. How much money you have, how much grade, how good grade you have, that sort of thing. Okay, your social status. Second, we seem to have a genetic predisposition to being happy or unhappy. About 25% of our potential for happiness appears to be determined by genes. Yet, genes act more like a blueprint that can be applied or ignored depending upon circumstances. third, we can exert considerable influence on our experience of happiness and unhappiness through the way we live and think, how we perceive life's events, how we react to them. And fortunately so, because our capacity for happiness will if our capacity for happiness were fixed, it would make no sense to study the phenomena of happiness or to try to become happier in a lasting way. So this is to say, happiness is within our choice, but we need to choose it. Okay. The outside circumstances, they count less. And the inner capacity, they count more. And those inner capacity, compassion, we are going to practice now. First, just like in the morning, we breathe in and out just to settle our mind. We will do that for exactly 1 minute, just 1 minute. And then we go on doing compassion meditation. To do compassion meditation, we have to connect, with our own pain, with our own shortcoming. Usually when people find out their own shortcoming, they become insecure, they get annoyed with themselves, they become insecure, having inferiority complex. So those are the reactions that we have when we find our shortcoming. We also lose our self-esteem. When we do that, the right side of our prefrontal cortex in the brain is active. But we can actually transform this to the right side. And this is by cultivating compassion. So when we see our shortcoming, when we see our negative qualities, we have to feel compassionate for ourselves. It's not about feeling sorry, but it's something like a mother is feeling the pain of her only and one child. She doesn't lose hope. Instead, she's very hopeful that her child's problem can be overcome. That's what we learn in the morning, resiliency. So trying to develop this one. In Burmese we call it the narese. The narese, that is compassion. To develop this compassion. So go over 1 or 2 or 3 shortcoming or disappointment that you have had in the past. Maybe in the past years. And straight away direct your mind towards compassion. Direct that compassion to yourself. That's the first one. The second one, look at your family members. It may happen to be your mom and dad. Sometimes, because of stress from work, there may be time they lose their temper. There may be time that they say something and they later regret. If that happens, you try to feel their pain. Instead of blaming them, instead of making them feel guilty, instead of, Mom, you should be doing like this, instead of blaming them. If you just embrace their pain and direct your compassion towards them, just embrace them with compassion. Comforting them, it's okay, Mom. It's okay, Dad. We all make mistakes. If you do that, healing will arise. Healing between you and your parents. So first is yourself, second is your parents. Try to feel the pain of your parents. Sometimes your parents, they feel social pressure, having to prove themselves in the society that they are successful people. To do that is very stressful. So you try to embrace their stress and feel compassion for them. And third, your sibling, if you have sibling, try to feel his or her pain and direct compassion towards them. Number 1, yourself. Number 2, your parents. Number 3, your sibling. Number 4, your best friends. Trying to see their shortcoming and then embrace them with compassion. Instead of, okay, I can do this better than you. Instead of feeling superior like that. Number 5 is your teachers. Even though, they are your teachers, there may be time they feel really, really stressed out. There may be time that you won't understand what they say, what they do. That's the time you need to develop compassion towards them. When you do that, what they do will make sense to you. So 5 people we are going to do. Number 1, yourself. Number 2, your parent. Number 3, your sibling. Number 4, your best friends. Number 5, your teachers. Can we do about 10 minutes this time? Anyone who has alternative suggestion? Is 10 minutes okay? Is 10 minutes okay? And can someone time it? Who has the time? Okay, please. Yeah, 10 minutes. Okay. For the first minute, breathe in slow and gentle. When you breathe, have compassion for your body because your body is tired. It needs oxygen. Breathe in with compassion for your body. Breathe out gently, releasing toxics from your body. Okay, we close our eyes lightly. Breathing in, supplying oxygen to the needy physical body. Start cultivating compassion for yourself. Visualize or revisit your disappointments, your frustrations. Revisit these circumstances. Feel those frustrations and disappointments. And then direct your mind straight away to compassion. Embrace those disappointments with compassion. Tell yourself it's okay. It's okay. Feeling that pain. Comforting yourself. Acknowledging the pain. Not suppressing it. Not denying it. Not fighting with it. You simply embrace the pain. move from one incident to the next about your own disappointments. Move to different people, your parents, your siblings, at least try to connect with one of their disappointment or negative qualities and feel compassionate for them. Have about 1 more minute to go. Breathe in and out slow and gentle. If your mind wanders, simply bring it back to compassion exercise. Try to connect with any problem that you have gone through. With you or your family, your friends, your surrounding that they have been through. gentle breathing. Slow and gentle breathing. Maintaining your focus on compassion. Generating compassion. Just take a nice breathing in and out 3 times. Bring your attention to your nostril. Breathing in, nice and gentle. Breathe in with compassion. Breathe in and out, slow and gentle. Thank you. You may open your eyes now. Any question? Microphone, please. Microphone. Okay.
So it's not just about compassion. It's actually about everything and how it all comes together. I was working on an essay earlier at school, and I was doing a research on euthanasia. And I want to know how compassion plays a role in it. Because when a person is suffering, do you stop the suffer by letting the person choose to end their life, or is it wrong?
This is a very tricky question. Euthanasia. I have faced this question many times, including from doctors and nurses who consult with religious body on ethical issue. So I have been part of this commission. Well, basically, as you know, there is pro-life and pro-choice, 2 groups. And Buddhism is basically, to be on the safe side, is on the pro-life side. When somebody is suffering very much, and how do we do is the mercy, like killing. We do what is called assisted suicide. Well, we are so tempted to do that, but we value life a lot more than that, stronger than that. So we should find a way to have the patient in some other way. My mother, needed. My own mother needed morphine. She was 82. I was in dilemma whether to support him. We sort of knew about 6 months in advance. So what we did was to prepare her mentally. And she had done maybe about 10 days meditation retreat. So she had some good foundation on this. So I was meditating with her nearly every day and I was helping her to feel comfortable, to be positive, like that, which produce a lot of positive hormone, not cortisol, which is stress-producing hormone. You see? So this is one of the ways to help her to cope with pain. Another thing is, earlier, we were talking about reciting, like chanting. You use the word prayer, but we didn't use the word prayer, we used the word chanting. So we chant what you may have heard, the message. That's the first sermon of the Buddha. My mother, she didn't understand word by word, but she knew the gist of it. So when we were chanting, she would be calm, knowing that her loved ones care about her. There came a time, maybe about 3 weeks before she died, we had to decide whether we would give her morphine. There's a morphine pad that you can just place it on the body. You don't need to take it orally. Or there's also an alternative of injection in addition to a pill. Everything was made available, by her children, including me. And we are confronted with this dilemma, how much to give her. But luckily, as the pain was increasing, her concentration was also increasing. She was in a position to cope with that. One day, she looked so much in pain, so my sister gave her, without telling her, 1 pill of morphine. And she became dizzy. And she asked, "What medicine you gave me? I feel dizzy, I can't meditate. So don't give me this medicine again." It took about 3 to 4 days for the effect to wear out. So after that, we never gave her. Luckily, she didn't need that again. She was coping that mentally. She was suffering from cirrhosis. That's a form of cancer, liver cancer. Not everyone, has been trained in meditation to do this. People just rely on chemical, that is morphine, to do this. Again, in the morning we were talking about intention. If your intention is not to end life, but to reduce pain slightly. We discussed so much about the dosage. Because I'm part of I'm a Buddhist chaplain to many families and also to Oxford University. Very often I'm faced with this. Sometimes I have to be with the family and the GP, and everybody is under stress and they couldn't decide. They even argue among the family members. At that moment, my position is that if you just help the patient to calm down, if that's the intention, give less dose, not a bigger dosage, just to help them to cope with the pain. And from time to time, you will have window of opportunity when the patient is alert, and try to be with them, try to show them compassion, try to help them to be mindful, to accept the pain. I think I have gone through with a few families like this. So it's different from outright giving a strong dose to put somebody sleep forever. It's different from that. But we are still using the same, maybe chemical, but with a different intention. Does it make any? Yeah. It's not an easy answer. I would still define my action as compassionate.
Thank you for your speech earlier. For my question, I wanted to refer back to the video of Siddhartha Gautama. So for him, his experiences, which is going beyond the city's borders, has led him to search for enlightenment. So I was wondering what personal experiences have led you to choose and pursue this path?
There wasn't any particular experience that led me to choose this. Just like any young boys in Myanmar, during the summer I was also ordained like others. But then I grew to like this life. It's more spacious. I can play more. When I was young, I feel more freedom. Okay, the home life and the monastery life. The monastery life was more free for me at that time. I was so young to have that kind of experience like Prince Siddhartha. Okay, he was 29. Okay, I was about 10, so I didn't have that kind of experience. But through instinct, what I knew was that I liked more than the home life. I was the youngest boy, so I got every attention that I needed at home. But I thought being in road gave me more freedom.
I have another question, which is like on the stage, I saw it says a cake in the playground with a tiger. Is that going to be talked about in this event?
Actually, we have been talking about this. I have been just related, my thoughts to that. The tiger is a wild animal, and it acts through instinct, impulses. That's what a wild animal is about. The emotion in our heart is like that. Anger, frustration, agitation, feeling annoyed, everything is like a tiger. But if you can connect with your breathing and you calm down a little bit, you can have a cake with your tiger. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Please.
What is the difference between compassionate meditation and metta bhavana? Because they seem to be interrelated. So one is loving kindness and one is compassion. What is the shade of meaning, the difference in those two words? They seem very similar.
Whether you call this metta meditation and compassion meditation, this form of meditation comes in a package of 4. The first thing is metta, loving kindness that the French monk was referring to. The second one, compassion. The third one, mudita, that is joyful feeling. The ability to develop joyful feeling. To make a tiger in our heart play, you like. The last one is called balanced emotion. I don't want to use the word equanimity. To me, it's about balanced emotion. So 4. Usually, I only focus on 2, the middle 2. In Pali, we call it karuna and mudita, compassion and joyful feeling. Compassion necessarily relates to pain, disappointments. Yesterday we talked about 2 kinds of wolves we were here, and I'd like to tell you guys who are just here today, we have 2 kinds of wolves in our heart, the gray one and the white one. The gray one represents all the negativity that we have that creates pain. The white one represents the positive side. These 2, positive experience and negative experience, they cover nearly if not all, nearly all our experiences. By using compassion to make sense of any painful experience, by using joyful feeling to make sense of the positive one, we actually feel more connected with ourselves and with people around us. So metta covers both positive and negative, whereas compassion manages only the negative experience. It neutralizes the negative experiences and transforms it into positive quality. You still have that pain, that pain doesn't have impact on you. You use that pain to motivate yourself. Like Thomas Edison, who created this light, this bath, he was motivated when he saw people suffering, not having light. It took him 10,000 times to succeed. What kept him going? Compassion. Because he was well connected with the pain and the suffering of people with no light. Motivation. At the back, yes, please.
Can I ask a question that isn't related to compassion, but Buddhism in general?
Yes, please.
So ever since I was a kid, I was told that since I'm a girl, in Buddhism, it's favored towards men. Is real Buddhism supposed to be that way? For example, things like I have to be particularly respectful and I can't touch certain items because I happen to be of the female gender. How does that work?
Can you show some example?
I don't know where it was, but when I was a kid, I went to this one pagoda and all the boys were climbing this little statue and I wasn't allowed to go, and I was a kid, so I'm like, why am I not allowed to go?
Actually, the boys were not supposed to be doing that either.
Oh. How has it become that it's apparent that women are apparently lower in this culture?
The whole point, allow me to be a little bit more direct and also radical. You see the wheel when we watch Life of the Buddha, the wheel. That wheel symbolizes the whole Buddhist practices. It has 8 spokes, 8 qualities. We call them the middle path, or we call them Eightfold Path. That Eightfold Path has no gender orientation.
Okay.
No gender orientation. There's no gender favor. Okay. It doesn't have any advantage. It doesn't give any advantage or disadvantage to any gender. But Buddhism, coming from India, it has a lot of influence from the general Indian culture, where women's status is usually considered lower. Okay, and Buddhism, knowingly or unknowingly, I mean Buddhist monk, not the Buddha himself, but Buddhist monks or other people, they just maybe subconsciously pick that up. I don't think you would have listened to this, but one of the prominent CROs was answering a question like this. It's just a tradition. It's not Buddhism. A tradition that ladies from going to different corners of the code and that sort of thing. It has nothing to do with Buddhism per se, but it has something to do with culture. With culture. When you actually realize that teaching, the gender becomes irrelevant. What we look at is that we look at suffering in a very non-personal way. In a very non-personal way. This is not to deny that in general in the world, both the East and the West, okay, the women have been disadvantaged for many reasons. One of the reasons is because that kind of opinion has been imposed on them. That they were born weaker, they were born secondary, that sort of thing. Another reason is that because they themselves have sustained that attitude. You see? So the remedy has to come from both genders.
So Buddhism in itself isn't sexist like I was told. That's very comforting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Because I used to be told, like, for example, I remember when I was 6 or 7, I accidentally put a Buddha statue on my lap. And I was like, no, you are dirty. You're a girl. You can't put it on your lap. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me, but sure. And I used to also be told that if, this sounds really dumb to me now, but if you walk past a monk and you are a woman, and if you wear certain clothes or you are revealing, then you are seducing the monk and it's your fault, regardless of whether or not that's your intention. I was very confused, which is why I was always set on the mindset that Buddhism is sexist, but now I'm very comforted that that isn't true. Thank you very much.
I think everybody will be confused in your position. Well, this is about, I should say, we have to try to understand that kind of expression. Maybe the expression isn't being put forward in a clear manner, or maybe is being expressed in a very one-sided way. If you just put the other way around, in front of the two seals, the two nuns, if boys, okay, dress inappropriate, and then walk past them, that would be considered implied as well. So this has more to do with the way of life rather than gender. The way of life is that monks and nuns, okay, they have chosen to leave home and to leave the comfort and luxury of home life, to live a simple and more guarded life. So, for any man to try to appear consciously or unconsciously as if attracting, or trying to be attractive to the nuns, or any girl trying to look that way to the monks, to the onlookers, they would generally judge you that way. Yeah, but I would think that the monks and the nuns themselves, they need to look after themselves as well. Where they might also need to, they also expect the people who especially go to that place to conform a certain norm.
Thank you.
I don't know how it applies to you necessarily, but in the spirit of compassion, and from a Westerner, I'm from North America, and looking at the amazing wisdom I see here, not only with you, but amongst all these young minds, it's really inspiring. But I see so much of this happening here, but this country needs, in my opinion, I'm very biased, I'm an educator, but this country needs to be transformed in the way education happens. That we're very lucky people here. We all go to international schools or private schools. How do you see this country changing? It can't completely transform. It can never ever achieve what it fully could be, because I think Myanmar people are pretty special that way. If all people don't have access to education that these children or these people have access to, how does Buddhism or mindfulness fit into that? Or how do you see that happening in this country?
I think my answer is going to be threatening on the border. I'm afraid. Okay. I hope I don't throw myself into politics by answering your question. Being a positive person, I like to tell you that something that you already know. The present government is reorganizing education, and they have brought in KG, and now it's 12 years as well. And there's more freedom. And from teacher center, they are moving to student center in terms of approach. He had conducted a one-day workshop at the ministry in Nebido on mindfulness. And at the moment, I have received a verbal invitation from the union minister to write about mindfulness for grade 7, 8, 9, 10, I think. And they like to do this. Of course, access to education. If you look at the government budget over the last 40 years, you see that education hasn't been one of the top priorities. Dare I say that on the part of the politician, there wasn't enough mindfulness of suffering related to lack of education. There wasn't enough of mindfulness on this. When you are not aware of, when you're not mindful of suffering coming from lack of opportunity in education, you pay the price. This is the law of cause and effect. The law of cause and effect. Successive government, they have other bigger and more urgent priorities, which you know. And over time, I hope they feel secure enough that they give education more opportunity. It's not possible to single out education alone from Buddhist point of view. We call this the law of interdependency. Education depends on economy. Economy depends on peace. Peace depends on how people manage their emotion. The way people manage their emotion again depends on how they are taught in the school. You see, everything is interconnected. So, this is to say that although I have never been part of any government, I have never been a supporter of any government. I would readily accept my responsibility for what has been going on in this country. You see, I cannot escape from blame. Knowingly, unknowingly, consciously, unconsciously, we share some responsibility. The question I ask myself at this point is that, do I want to become part of the problem, or do I want to become part of the solution? So to become part of the solution, I need to be positive. I need to feel the pain and then become compassionate. Not just towards the people who agree with me, but to those who don't agree with me.
Since the topic of abortion has been on the news lately, would you mind telling us about Buddhism's stance on abortion? Yeah.
I'd like to refer to one of the books published by Cambridge University. It's called Introduction to Buddhist Ethics. If you want to write down the name of the book. Introduction to Buddhist Ethics by Peter Harvey. Peter Harvey, this is from Cambridge University Press. It has answered this question. I think, briefly, I have already indicated earlier that Buddhism, maybe we can say, is pro-life. A question was put to me some 13, 14 years ago. That in Thailand, when some ladies have had an abortion, they came to the temple, the monastery, asked the monks to bless them. And when the monks did some blessing for them so that they can calm down, so that they can feel less guilty, some pro-life campaigners accused the monks of supporting abortion. But I don't think the question is that black and white. The reason that somebody aborts, takes an abortion is because of different factors. Not least because of the rejection of the society, social pressure, the emotion control, the reproductive education, the social, how do we call this? The social norm, all those things. You know, Steve Jobs, the iPhone producer, iPad producers, the first child that he had with his lover, he didn't acknowledge for many years. For many people who came from the Catholic faith, who came from the Orthodox Christianity, from Islam, and from conservative Buddhist community, they care more about how they would appear in the society rather than the pain of the unborn child or their own daughter that way. So I'm trying to portray that it's not good enough to look at the issue of abortion on the woman who takes, who aborts, or to look at the question of abortion out of context. In sociology, in psychology, in philosophy, we would say, just as I mentioned earlier, many things are interconnected. I hope we would look at the issue that way and try to discuss more widely and listen. I had to pronounce, straight away, like a black and white issue, right and wrong that way. Because the question is not as simple as that. It causes pain, not just to the 2, 3, 4 people can say, actually to the wider society. The sooner we acknowledge this pain, and the wider we do that, the less for abortion, we would need.
It's in the 21st century. A lot of people usually accept different types of love, I guess, and people have been open to different attractions to different genders and stuff like that. In history, I learned that Catholicism and as well as Islam do not accept homosexuality. What is Buddhism's stance on homosexuality?
I just have to interpret it here, okay? Because I don't think the same question was put to the Buddha, and he didn't make any pronouncement on this. What he said in the 5 precepts was, okay, to be faithful to your partner. And it doesn't define the partnership in terms of gender. So, although in the Indian context where Buddhism came from, generally heterosexual is not encouraged or maybe downright condemned. Is downright condemned. I don't think Buddhism takes a step as harsh as that. Not that I'm encouraging you to do this, but another thing is that, well, what about co-living? Okay, living together like that. The Burmese culture wouldn't encourage that. But what Buddhism actually says that when the Buddha talks about married life or a marriage, did he imagine the form of marriage that we have now, that 2 people sign a piece of paper and are bound legally together like this? What if they don't sign any piece of paper? I don't think the form of marriage that existed 2,600 years ago was like what we have now. I like to think that the Buddha places emphasis on faithfulness, on caring about each other. Okay, on appropriate authority being given to both genders. I think he cares about those things. the Sutta. If we read that, first in the context of 2,600 years ago, and then try to take that spirit and apply it to what we have now, I think you may have some of the answers that you are raising. Question.
To relate back to what you said earlier today about like having good deeds affect the next life that you have to go to after the death. When I was younger and growing up, I've been told that if a person is a homosexual or is part of the LGBT community, then it's because of the bad things that they've been done in their past life. So However, you just stated that Buddhism doesn't really have a clear stance on the community as a whole. So how does that really affect?
I think that comes from someone who has already made up their mind, generalizing that something that they don't like comes from a bad deed due to bad deeds in the past. I mean, when we talk about Gandhya Desi Karma, many people actually generalize it more than the Buddha would do. If you would care to read the original text and compare the popular opinion that people have. For someone who has already made up their mind that being a gay or lesbian is a sin, for someone who has already made up their mind that way, they will be looking for an answer that this is due to their past misdeeds. But I don't think you have as much freedom in other religions as you have in Buddhism when it comes to the responsibility of reproductivity. We don't have the responsibility to reproduce. It's an individual choice. In some other religions, it's an obligation. In Buddhism, people like me, we have the right to choose to live the way we do. And for some people who thinks negatively about the different form of sexuality than the way they prefer, or than what the majority have. As I said already, they have already made up their mind. The prejudice towards that kind of issue is prevalent, in Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, because for them God created people like this. Adam and Eve, man and woman. For Buddhism, we don't believe in creation. And what people appear to be is what they have accumulated. If people are more interested in one thing, they reinforce that, including a form of sexuality. They reinforce that. If they reinforce that, they carry that habit with them. What is important in the Buddhist tradition is that you care about each other, and you don't. You are not too self-centered when pursuing this. When expressing this desire. So, if two people, regardless of their gender, enter into unionship, some people, they exploit each other for their own pleasure. But some people, they care more about each other's feeling. You see. So, the negativity can happen also in the traditional marriage life between a man and a woman, or between lesbian or between gay. It can happen. So we are actually talking about how you don't hurt each other, instead you care, and how you are faithful to each other. I think that's more important to my understanding.
Hello. Hi. Hello. Excuse me, I have a question.
Okay.
Yes. Sorry about that. So as the previous question has brought up, and many other previous questions have brought up, most of us here were brought up on a lot of beliefs that our parents or the grown-ups around us have imposed on us that I guess may not necessarily be in the original scriptures or part of the original Buddhist beliefs. And do you think that, like, for example, the story about what Shin said about like women being lower, which is not necessarily true, or things like that our parents and grown-ups might believe, but that we do not want to believe. Do you think that we should make an effort to, I guess, try to get them to be more open-minded about it, or like try to make them see, or should we just let it be and we should go our own way for the sake of, I guess, maintaining harmony?
I should wish you good luck. Well, I think with compassion as your motivation, I think you should do. But when you do that in a very confrontational way, you're not going to achieve your goal very soon. Sometimes when we think we are right, we also want to impose our opinion on them, so we become just like them. Okay, so a form of discussion which is based on compassion and non-confrontational, but peaceful action. This is very important to keep the dialogue open. I think if you look at your parents with compassion, if they I like the word, the English expression I like is the benefit of doubt. If you give them the benefit of doubt, and you also give this to yourself in a very equal and fair manner, I think you will keep the channel of communication alive. These social values, they change. But what we believe to be true, we don't want it to be changing. And there's trouble with this. Every generation. In 15, 20 years' time, when a younger generation comes and challenges your social interpretation, you might feel the same. So give them some benefit of doubt. I actually encourage you to read more of the original Buddhist scriptures. One of the books that I recommended earlier, Introduction to Buddhist Ethics, that's from he has done research on the Buddhist original context, and being a Westerner, he takes on challenging issues, what we have been discussing here, and giving his interpretation based on original Buddhist scriptures. Can I go to this first? Okay, this. I think you haven't raised a question.
So, when talking about the topic of abortion, you mentioned that in terms of Buddhism, abortion is not merely a black and white issue. It's more fluid than that, and it's in a way more case by case.
Let me rephrase it again. I mentioned twice earlier that Buddhism may be pro-life. There are two camps, pro-choice and pro-life. Pro-choice, supports abortion outright. Pro-life denies it. But Buddhist understanding is closer to pro-life in that it values life to the maximum. But I don't think with the core Buddhist theory of the law of dependent origination or the law of dependent interdependency, I don't think the abortion issue can be taken out of context and look at it on its own. It's related to social value, how people hold their social value at the time. So the economic status and the religious interpretation and political and so on. Yes, please.
With that being said, how do I say this? Since abortion cannot be taken out of context, with the Buddha's interpretation, in what sort of context would it be seen as favorable or less favorable?
Number one that we should mention is that Buddhism values life, even the life of the unborn child. Having said this, what everyone should be feeling is compassion towards those concerned, those people who are concerned. It wouldn't be right to single someone out and blame that incident. Okay. The direct responsibility, indirect responsibility is shared by many. This is what I like to emphasize. The opinion formers in politics, in religions, in social values, in education, those things, okay, they all have bring us to this issue. It's a very passionate issue in America now. President Trump stopped some funding to certain states just to stop this. We are not as passionate as in the States. Yes, please. Yes.
This is not a very interesting question for most of you, but of the two main methods of meditation that exist in Myanmar, the Mahasi and the Mogul, which one do you prefer to use, or do you use a different method?
I actually have equal respect to both traditions, and I have practiced both traditions. Actually, we have more than a dozen meditation techniques, okay, being practiced in this country. Pa'ao being one of them, and Asan Goenka, for example, which has branches in more than 90 countries in the world. The scientists, the book that we will be distributing later, those books, they have demonstrated that people who practice Mahasi, Mogul, Pa'ao, and Asan Goenka, even Mahayana form of meditation from Tibet, from other places, the positive impact that they have on people, the change of the alpha is the same. So scientifically, I would say they are all effective. Outside, we go for the name, we go for the brand, and we fight, we argue. Okay, maybe. Is it you? Okay.
Thank you. Right. Since I've been living in Myanmar for like my entire life, here the culture and the religion is very much intertwined, and they're like infused with each other. Wherever you look at one, the practices you can find they're very much related. And my question is, wouldn't it be better if everyone was just to follow the original scriptures and everything that was said originally, and follow Buddhism without like any bias or like the cultural practices?
In an ideal world, I would want you to succeed. Okay, but in practice, every country, have their culture rooted in a certain religion. In Europe, even though much of Europe has gone through a period of communism, but you can say, like Jacques Delors, the French statesman who drew the latest EU constitution, said, European culture is deeply rooted in Christianity. So they had a lot of problem for Turkey to join the EU because the Turkish culture is rooted in Islam. Okay. You would find it, I don't know where you can find a culture not related to any religion. So this is the difficulty of it that we have. And another difficulty is that to understand a religion on its pure form, it takes a lot of enlightenment. Enlightenment in both the Buddhist sense and also in the European sense. The Europeans, the 18th century Enlightenment, where people came to have liberal mind and started accepting differences in religious belief. Before that, they didn't. Oxford University never accepted people of different faith, until the end of the 18th century. Okay. After her, yes. Thank you. Can you pass? Yes, you first.
So in Buddhism, we're taught that what our parents taught us is true, and what they say is true, regardless of if they are wrong or right. So if we try to correct them by saying that this is wrong and explain it to them, is it a form of disrespect, or is it a form of negotiation?
I started the mindfulness session today with non-judgmental value. I think I should stick to that. Well, I should say this to you. When you're trying to have a discussion with your parents, what you're trying to do is you're trying to have a deeper connection with them in terms of value that they hold, in terms of belief system that they subscribe to, in terms of the way of life that they lead. But when you do that, just as they are trying to impose something on you, if you try to impose something on them, I think it will just clash. But first, if you try to understand them first, why they believe what they do, trying to find their own reason, not before you deny or accept them, just trying to. But sometimes when you ask a lot of questions, because going to international school, you ask the direct question, and your parents are not used to this, and you should understand them that they might feel intimidated by your question. If they feel intimidated, you press the what we say, the cortisol hormone. It's a stress production hormone. In terms of the gray and the white wolf, you are fitting the gray wolf. So you need to be fitting the black wolf, and suppressing the what we call oxytocin hormone. Then they will listen to you. That's a way to do this. Madam.
Yeah. All right. So my question has a lot to do with a lot of the young people here, because I'm confused. As we're all growing and going and getting a good education, and and obviously I'm aging and that kind of thing. We're gaining all this experience and education, and I wonder, I just can't reconcile this in my brain. We're gaining all these ego, right, and this filter going on, and I thought that was probably a good thing, that you would have lots of experiences and education, of course, but then when we talk about meditation with the 3 R's, and you register, you recognize, and you accept, it seems like what we're doing is really taking away that filter and that self-egotism. And so I'm trying to figure out how does this all go together. And then, as a parent and that kind of thing, I'm looking at the questions that the young people are putting out, and then as a teacher, how is this working in a brain, and how do I reconcile, okay, is my experience here more good or important, or should I be taking away that ego to listen without that filter? I just am really confused.
I think listening to your question, I'm confused too. I don't think I have any answer.
I think it comes to neuroscience, and it's confusing to me.
Thank you. I try my best. What you say, a good education, I accept it up to a certain level. A good education, in a sense, these children, they learn how to take an initiative, how to take care of themselves. These are all very positive points. But knowing a lot more information is not necessarily a good information. A professor from Jerusalem, and also a graduate, who has written a book, 21 Lessons for 21st Century. Bill Gates has reviewed this for the New York Times, and is on the internet. The 21 Lessons for 21st Century. He asked himself a question when he was 23. He read a lot. History, archaeology, classic philosophy, well read. And when he was a PhD student at Oxford, he asked himself, why now I know so much, I have so much information, why I'm not happy? And one of his friends, suggested that he go on a meditation retreat. He said, this is nonsense. He didn't care. But after a year, that clicked, and he joined as a CIG Goenka's retreat in England. Since then, he has been a regular meditator. He has written 3 books, all bestsellers, selling millions of copies. So, what I want to bring to you is that, good education in terms of Buddhist interpretation means the education that helps us to solve problems. Simply, I have been to a good university. Simply, I have a lot of information at my fingertips. Doesn't necessarily indicate that I'm educated. Until and unless I have helped, practically to reduce some problem. Maybe facing the country, maybe facing the society, maybe facing, our younger generation. So, with this, now, mindfulness is a form of education. It helps us to observe more, to be more objective and less judgmental. So, this is where mindfulness comes in. Of course, the first and noticeable effect is that it calms you down. It helps you to be more attentive. But mindfulness is more than that. It can be summed up in 2 C. The first C is communication. With mindfulness, you connect with yourself emotionally, physically, your sensation. The second C, comprehension, communication, comprehension. The same with other people outside you. Mindfulness means a way to communicate with them. What we do, compassion, that's to communicate with their feeling and then to understand them that way. That would be a form of education. I think we should move to the next. Can we move to the next lesson? Do we have time? What time now? 3. It would be a shame, okay, because I have brought a lot of books. I want you to see that they exist and just flip through them, and maybe the questions are better.
Or
will you have me answer all the? I mean, I'm very interested in that question, but okay. Pardon? Yes, I want to show you some of the books that I have and what I have in mind. Can you bring those books? I want to show you.
Maybe you can pass them out while the rest of us ask questions, so people can pass it around and look at it.
You see, this kind of book and those books, all in English, and they all have scientific base, evidence, and I want maybe 2, 3, 4 of you, to kind of flip through one book and pick up 1 or 2 paragraphs and discuss that. I don't know if that sounds good. Andrew, go a little bit further. Yeah. And do we have more on there? More books? Do you have more books? Or is that all? This is what I was just referring to. Yeah, Professor Harry from Oxford. If 2 or 3 of you just take one book and then pass on. Maybe you haven't got some over there. You haven't got. Can you spare one book? Can you share and give one to the corner, the people at the corner? You have one. You haven't got one. If you can sit in a circle and share, what about that? Sit in a circle. Yeah, you can organize yourself in a circle and discuss.
weeks ago was it? It was yesterday. Another attachment.
As we grow old, we'll go to colleges and stuff, right? And in those colleges, we'll meet people with different religions and beliefs. So what should we do or react when they say our religion is bad or disrespectful? I think what's our good answer?
What? Hello? If you're done flipping through the books, please put it in one pile at the end of each row, and when the volunteers will come pick it up. Thank you.
Did not.
Please hand them to Victor, who's walking around.
Who's Victor?
Who's Victor?
I want to list all the books. That would be possible. We'll put it up there and go up and do it.
If you were not done reading, you can continue reading. Or like, if you've given your book, you can ask for your book back. Everyone, please take a seat. We're not done. Hey, corner, please sit. Thank you, sorry.
I'd like to conclude with about 3 minutes meditation to calm you down after a lot of excitement from the Q&A. All the questions are very interesting. I'm very grateful to anyone, with questions. But in the end, we have to accept our limit. The first time, before the Buddha taught, he surveyed the audience, the intellectual level, the EQ level, emotional quotient level. And he found the limitation. He said, look, a lot of leaves, from the trees in the forest. In comparison with the leaves in my hand, the leaves in his hand is just so tiny in comparison with the number of leaves in the forest. He said, I would be able to solve problem only this much. That is why the Buddha accepting the limits of his own limit to solve problem, and also the limits of his listeners to understand him and to actually see through the problem. He came up with priority, what he could do within a certain length of time. And he focused on what was essential. That is to connect with pain or suffering. And then to reduce that. He laid down his vision, his practice that we have been sharing today, that we can go on using it. And expand capacity, despite the limitation that we have. So no amount of information is enough to solve the problem that humanity faces. We all have to try our best. Again, when we look at problems with positive thinking, we have to believe that we can be part of the answer. And we can make contribution. This is called positive thinking. So in order to do this, I'd like to introduce you very shortly, in a very short form. It's called joyful meditation. This is just to focus on something that you have accomplished. If you have volunteered, just revisit those activities, the brainstorming process, the effort that you put into that. And if you are revisiting, your own work in the last year, just revisit how much effort you put into, how much hard work you put in. But rejoicing in your own work is not enough. If you stop there, it would be self-centered. So you really need to expand that and rejoice in other people's good work as well. It wouldn't cost you anything. It wouldn't take a lot of time. Okay. Instead, it would generate what we call oxytocin. Oxytocin is a medical term. That's the hormone. Okay. The positive hormone that we have, that the mother has when she feeds her baby. We all can generate that hormone, that positive hormone, oxytocin. To do that, one of the ways is to rejoice in the good thing that we have. Remember, there is a theory called 80-20 theory. 80% in our life is very good. 20% needs improving. But we give 80% of our attention to the 20% of problem that we have. And only 20% of our energy is dedicated to rejoicing the 80% positive things that we have in life. As a result, we are all negativity biased. We are biased towards negativity. We retain more of the negativity than the positive one. Anything positive, very soon, we lose its value, and we need something new to make ourselves happy, because we don't have the capacity to retain that. This is called negativity bias. So, in order to balance this, what we need to do is to focus on the successes that we have had, the achievement that we have had, and not just our own, but also others. So we take 3 minutes first, just revisit, all the things that you have done and are proud of. Number 2, think of, your best friends, what they have done, what they have achieved, and be proud of them. Number 3, your parents, look at the positive side, their hard work, their positive thing. Okay, so three group of people: you, your best friend, and your parents. 3 minutes. Okay, we do this meditation. Just breathe in and out slow and gentle. Breathe in and out slow and gentle. Can someone time? 3 minutes. Slow and gentle breathing. Slow and gentle breathing. Just trying to connect with positive things in your life. If you don't do this, whenever you see someone successful, you might feel insecure. You might feel jealous. Thank you. It's 3 minutes now. Before we wrap up, I'd like to tell you that I'm interested in outreach program like humanitarian. If you do any of those things, like what of you had just told me earlier, I'm interested in them, and I'd like to do something to support you. And the second thing is when we organize this kind of seminars next time, I'd like to invite people from grade 12, grade 11 and grade 10 to become volunteers. You have seen what the volunteers do today to help me, and I will train you a little bit so that you can do that. And in that way you will be contributing to the awareness and the improvement of emotion management or EQ status in Myanmar. Do you want to get parents to come in? And can do you know? Do you want to come and say something? Say thank you to everyone.
Thank you all for coming. And for today's donation, the parents have funded a total of $20,85,300 and to donate to Pong Pong. So for that, we would like to say Tadu 3 times. And within the last 2 days, they have donated a total of $60,45,000, $1,040 and 50,000 baht.
To end this event, we would like to say Bodha Dharana Siran Tetu 3 times. So, Bodha Dharana Siran Tetu, Bodha Dharana Siran Tetu, Bodha Dharana Siran Tetu. Thank you. Dadu, dadu, dadu.
I like to say that 20 lakhs Burmese Jat from the total donation will be dedicated to the nunnery college that the two Siale